This week, Chapter 7 discusses the legal and ethical rights and responsibilities of educators in the United States, as well as the rights and responsibilities of our students. Due to time constraints, I'm going to focus on the rights and responsibilities of educators. Now, there can be a lot of overlap between law and ethical guidelines. However, the primary difference is that law tells us what we absolutely can and cannot do, as well as what we have to do, what is required of us. Whereas ethics guide our professional behaviors by telling us what we should do, not necessarily what we have to do. There can also be a lot of gray area found in both law and ethics, and that is intentional by design. Our laws and ethical guidelines are dictated by our past. History presents itself in the form of experiences, things that we have seen and done, decisions that we have made, and situations that we have found ourselves in. However, this can't possibly prepare us for every future decision or every future situation that is presented. So, this gray area, wiggle room, open to interpretation that we find within law and ethical guidelines allows us a universal sense of application for situations and decisions that have yet to present themselves. On the legal side of things, we are guided by the Constitution. Specifically, in this chapter of the text, we discuss the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendments and their implications on the educational system, and specifically as us as educators, as well as federal, state, and local laws. Now, teachers have rights under the law, just as anybody else does, and those rights can be divided into three main categories: employment rights, academic freedom rights, and copyright rights. um, on the employment side of things, these rights affect our ability to become licensed in the first place, the contracts that we have to sign in order to become teachers, tenure, collective bargaining, and even our dismissal. If it affects our hiring, it can affect our firing. On the academic freedom aspect of things, this is basically our autonomy as teachers. This gives us the freedom to choose how we want to teach, what materials we want to use to teach, and the best way to teach the students that we have. Without this academic freedom and the right to it, we would be guided by people who know nothing about us, know nothing about our students, and know nothing about our communities and telling us how to teach. And then on the copyright side of things, this basically tells us how much of what we can borrow from whom in our line of work. This also carries on to our students, and it's our responsibility to teach our students about copyright law and fair use. Now, on the professional responsibility side of things, again, the difference between law and ethics. Our rights are law, our responsibilities are ethics. There are three main categories that we fall into with professional responsibilities, and that is liability, child abuse, and our private lives. Now, on the liability side of things, it is our professional responsibility to keep our students safe. Our parents expect that. Our community expects that. As a parent, I certainly expect my child's teacher to be watching out for them and ensure that they're safe when they are under their supervision. Now, that's not to say that I expect my children's teacher to parent them, but I do expect them to care about them enough to ensure their safety while they are the responsible adult for them. In the book, they talk about that as in loco parentis, or basically in lieu of the parents, instead of the parents. So when the parents aren't there, teachers have a responsibility to keep the students safe, and that is their liability. Negligence. We can be charged with negligence and found negligent if we aren't taking the right actions to ensure our students' safety. Child abuse. When it comes to child abuse, there is no circumstance in where we can find ourselves that we are not responsible legally or ethically for reporting child abuse. We are even protected by the law in instances where child abuse isn't found, but we had every right to suspect it and therefore report it. And then, as far as our private lives go, yes, we are allowed a certain level of privacy, just as any individual would be. However, we are legally, personally, and professionally required to be responsible and act as role models for our students and within our community. These legal, personal, and professional responsibilities lead us to the decisions we make in our digital footprints, how we present ourselves online, in the choices we make and decisions that we make in our personal lives in physical life, and in the decisions we make in the things that we say and how we present ourselves. Now, the level to which we can be held responsible is described in the book as notoriety. Basically, how big of a deal is it within the community? How well is it known? But we are still held to these levels of idealism because we are considered role models within our community. So ultimately, it boils down to the biggest difference between law and ethics, rights and responsibilities, and the overlap that we find between them as educators, and the high standards that we are held compared to the average citizen.